Deserted. By Kelly Sweeny. Nobody understood me, but that was fine. Do we really understand ourselves? Who am I? What am I? Those questions played over and over in my mind. My whole life I lived a lie. Outwardly, but mainly within myself. I had an option to experience life beyond my limits, and it changed my life forever. The sounds, the sights, and the balance of the world is different. I found myself packing for a week to head out west for a getaway. Work was stressful, life was tense, and me and my boyfriend wanted a change in scenery. A guy we knew a little offered a change in atmosphere for a couple days, and I've personally never been beyond my comfort zone and wanted to see the world. So we did it. The drive went smooth for the first 15 or so hours, and the night got colder. For March it wasn't too bad though. We stopped at Niagara Falls, and with my camera I brought with me I snapped a lot of photos on the road. Niagara Falls looked different than what I expected. I know it was close to the end of winter, but there was a lot of garbage surrounding the ground. I hope someday I can see it when it's cleaned up. We stopped in the world's largest truck stop in Iowa, and I took pictures of the outside. It had many shops in it, which was pretty cool even though I had very little money to spend on food. We took pictures of the windmills along the Kansas roads, for they had so many for miles. The sun shined through the window and I smiled. What a change from what I was used to. Then we stopped into a very historical town. The place was very large and had 2 floors and 2 huge bars, one upstairs and one downstairs. The downstairs was a huge restaurant, which we decided to get something to eat since we lived off Popeye's chicken for 3 days. The food was very good and not bad on prices either. Upstairs was a huge lounge with about 10 different couches and chairs, all different colors and very relaxing. There was a huge section full of half a dozen pool tables, and I watched the guys have a few drinks and play pool. When we were done having fun there, we stopped at the largest candy store ever. Everything was so expensive, so we went for the smaller, cheaper candy items. I found a bag of pink-flavored popcorn for my mom because I knew it was her favorite. There was a whole aisle of just Pez dispensers. I've never seen so many in my life. It was overwhelming to the max because there was so much candy, I wanted it all. I got a cavity just thinking about it. It was now very dark and I was asleep in the back seat and woke suddenly by a large cracking sound. It was a large truck in front of us that had rocks come back with force and hit underneath the vehicle. The vehicle was undrivable. Here we found ourselves on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere on the big dark silent road. The 3 of us stood there and tried to wave down cars passing by, but they just kept driving. I will admit I was very scared. About 15 minutes later a vehicle finally pulled over and took our 3 things of luggage into his trunk and piled us in, leaving the vehicle on the road. I looked back and thought to myself, this is not good at all. I looked ahead and laid my head onto my bag on my lap, one strap of it over my chest, for it contained my personal items. My boyfriend kept assuring me everything will be okay, and I believed him, so I smiled at him and tried not to look fearful. The guy driving was very big, somewhat old-aged, and had a heart enough to pick us up. His big gold horseshoe ring on his finger was full of diamonds, and he smiled through the rearview mirror back at me and my boyfriend. He dropped us off at the nearest hotel a town over from where we left the vehicle, so we could figure out how to get the vehicle fixed and back on the road and how much it would cost. We were all under a lot of stress. After paying for a hotel room the first 2 nights, our money started to run low. The second night the guy we traveled with left for the night. We never asked, nor did we care, because we needed time to ourselves to gather our thoughts. That night my boyfriend got a hold of his childhood friend and he invited us to dinner in Nebraska, about 2 towns from our location at the hotel. I was excited. When we came to pick us up, the men laughed and reminisced, and it was the most peace we've had in 2 days. When we got to his neighborhood I watched out the window as the houses lit up. The atmosphere was breathtaking. Very well kept, yards full of flowers. We got to his house and the view was beautiful. His 5 small children and wife welcomed us immediately and dinner smelled amazing. Even after 4 years I can still smell the aroma. His small children had a lot of space and it was a very warm environment, very comforting. The little ones sat at the small table while the 4 adults sat at the big table. The children said a prayer over their food as I stood amazed at the enlightenment they brought to our hearts in that very moment. After dinner we chatted a little and he dropped us off at the hotel. It was a very long day so we went to bed. That was the first night of good sleep we had since we left Maine. When we woke up we tried to figure out what we were going to do. We started early by looking in phone books for churches that might help us in emergency situations, but we couldn't get much help because we weren't citizens of that state, so we packed up and waited for the guy we traveled with to come back, and we called a tow truck only for them to tell us there was no way to fix the vehicle that we drove in, so we were all a little down. With the few $100s we had left to our names we got a cab to the Greyhound station and aboard the bus to the next town over until we could figure out what to do. So much confusion and we were all exhausted, but we kept our heads on. For the time being, that is. When we got on the bus the seats were so packed people's body heat made me sick and nauseated, so I tried to close my eyes and forget about the days we've had so far. After the bus ride we took another bus with our luggage and stayed in a hotel, not knowing that was the last of the money any of us had. The hotel room was very awkward. The front desk people were talking amongst each other in an unfriendly manner, which we couldn't understand because we weren't Asian. They handed us the keys and I sat my luggage down finally after walking up 3 flights of stairs and being so tired and hungry. When we got in the hotel room, the guy we traveled with acted very strange and paranoid-like, started panting and sat down in the chair. As if he was planning an aggressive attack on us. He yelled at the top of his lungs and frightened me very strongly. Then he pushed my boyfriend across the room for no apparent reason and got in my face and yelled for me to shut up because I was very fearful of what he was going to do next. He paced back and forth and after a few minutes he sat down and was quiet and awkwardly silent. Me and my boyfriend sat on one bed and the guy on the other. We tried to ease our minds. The guy invited some random strangers in our room. A girl and a guy. I tried to fall asleep, but I was so uncomfortable with the situation I slept with one eye opened and never took an eye off my luggage. I felt like I couldn't trust anybody and it hurt me. That next morning I woke up and the guy we traveled with was gone, but his stuff remained in the same spot. He told us the night before he had someone who was going to wire him money so we could get back to Maine, but it never happened. The people he invited in that previous night were still here and looked very unstable but helped us pick up. I remember to this day what the guy said to me. He said a demon followed him around wherever he went. It made me think maybe it somehow possessed the guy we traveled with and he freaked out and left us. I was crying and my boyfriend tried to calm me down. Where are we going to go? I kept saying over and over again. On the way down to the lobby we let the kid we didn't know out of kindness use our phone, our only way of communication, 4,000 miles away from home, and he took off with it and we never saw him again. Kind people always get walked over. So here me and my boyfriend were broke, phoneless, exhausted, with a bunch of luggage. A giant army suitcase on wheels, a duffel bag, 2 small blankets we used in the car and 2 pillows. If I knew before what I knew at that moment I wouldn't have packed so much stuff. With the exception of the blanket and pillows, which saved us later on. I was hysterical but my boyfriend kept reassuring me we would be okay. Even though he had no idea what we were in for. There was a computer in the lobby and we tried to sign on Facebook about noon. I kept looking out the window to make sure the guy we came with didn't come back, but he didn't come back. I felt totally lost and confused. Why would anybody want to do this to someone? I couldn't wrap my head around the whole processing mechanism. I looked to my left and a drunk guy sat on the couch in the lobby and the owners hounded him to leave but he refused. I watched a small Asian guy lift up the side of the couch and the drunk guy fell off it and onto the floor. Then he got back onto it and I watched this happen a few times before he left. It was the first time I laughed in a while. Nobody responded to our messages and we were running out of time to use the computer. My account started telling me I couldn't access my profile and that I was hacked. So I had to try to get on my boyfriend's account. I was trying to explain to my niece that responded and very worried about me that I was hacked, but my time ran out. I cried because I was scared. My boyfriend was trying to hide it to keep me calm, but he had no idea what we were going to do either. So we gathered our stuff and walked outside. That's when we first met the first Matthew that gave us hope. He stood at the bus stop as we walked up the sidewalk and handed us 2 bus tickets. We took the bus with him and all of our luggage to downtown Denver from Lakewood, Colorado. Although we had no idea what was going to happen next. My boyfriend looked over at me and smiled. "We will be fine," he once again assured me. I believed him.